I'm really glad to be here and just very much enjoyed the last two statements. It's interesting how, from the perspective of a city leader, you can look at these things, you can look at the subject of tree planting very much from the perspective of needing to address a crisis, an issue. And it's great to hear the science challenges and the social capital messages that were just shared. So we've talked about articles being written, involvement of so many actors and players. And perhaps what I can do in the next few minutes is just share a little bit about how we as a city have looked at tree planting in a very practical and pragmatic way to address some of the major challenges that our city is facing. At the same time, recognizing, of course, that this is addressing the climate change challenges, and also noting the importance of having not just the financial capital, as was mentioned earlier, but the social capital of community engagement. So Freetown. I came into office in 2018, Mayor of Freetown, very, very much as a result of a crisis in our environment and in sanitation. So the thought of planting trees was already there, not just as a thought, but as a determination. And in January of this year, after 1.5 years in office, we were able to launch #Freetown, the Tree Town. And we did so without actually having a clear budget, without knowing where the money was coming from, but understanding that we desperately needed to do this because of the impact of the deforestation that our city was already seeing. So I want to start off first by saying a little bit about what Freetown, the Tree Town is and how we're approaching it, but speaking again to some of those issues that were raised in the first address about the skepticism, how Freetown, the Tree Town is very clearly and very appropriately addressing challenges that are now global. What we are experiencing with deforestation, with the dangers to our water catchment, to soil erosion, the destruction of our mangrove, destruction of biodiversity, these are not abstract issues. They're very real and tangible issues that can really devastate a small city like ours. And planting trees, no matter what the skeptics say, truly is a very, very important tool. Of course, it's not the only tool in the toolbox, but it's a very, very important tool in addressing these challenges. But it's important to note, as has been said already, that we're talking about not just planting trees, but growing trees. So, Freetown, the Tree Town. What is it? What does it look like? First, let me paint you a picture of our city. Our city has a population of 1.2 million people, and that population more than doubled in the last 25 years. This is particularly challenging because of the demographic of our city, the geographic location. So Freetown is on the west coast of Africa. It's bordered by the Atlantic Ocean. It has a beautiful beach coastline, a plain, and then mountains in a peninsula around the city. And those mountains were forested. They were once, not that long ago, lush green forest. But the challenge of the population explosion, led mainly by rural urban migration, has meant that a lot of that tree cover has in a very short space of time been destroyed, deforested, cut down, as people have searched for land in a setting where there hasn't been, because we're working on that, there hasn't been effective building control nor land use planning. So the result has been deforestation of hillsides, meaning erosion is a threat, leading to flooding, but of course, the destruction of water catchments has also had a water challenge. And did I mention that along our coastline, we also have mangroves? Very, very important. We used to have some of the most exotic bird life, and a lot of that is under threat, as is our fishing stock, because the mangrove were the breeding grounds for our fish. So I begin to paint a picture. What will Freetown, the tree town, do? We're planting 1 million trees. And I know everyone's saying, it's a number, it's a number. But those numbers are really meaningful, because you need to have enough of an impact for you to see the effect. And I'm not the tree scientist, but we worked with scientists to determine the species that would be appropriate for the hillsides, for the mangroves, for our indigenous tree population, because those concerns about bringing in exotic trees, which could have an impact on soil, sucking soil nutrients, etc., are all very real. So let's keep the science alongside the enthusiasm. It's important that we get the science right, so that what we're doing is productive and constructive, and we're not introducing new problems. So in Freetown, the tree town, we narrowed it down to about 15 species. In this rainy season, the first 500,000 seedlings, and they've been grown over the last 8 months, more 9 months now, in nurseries around the city and sometimes outside of the city. So from this perspective of what we're planting, that's what we're planting. Where are we planting? We're planting, as I mentioned, on hillsides, on plains, in the mangroves, and we're planting with people. So one of the challenges of having a city where your population is exploded is that you've got very little space to plant. And you're not wanting to displace people, as was mentioned before. So we're collaborating with our citizens, we're collaborating with our residents, and we're collaborating with the district next door to us, which has a lot more land. So some of the planting is done in Freetown. And where is it done? It's done in people's homes. It's done in their backyards, in their back gardens. It's done in school compounds. It's done in offices. It's done where we can, in open public spaces that the city has, but also, as I've mentioned, where we don't have enough of public space, we're planting in the district next door, because we're surrounded, as I described our city landscape, we're actually surrounded by that next district. So this means the people, our residents, are very involved in the process. How did we get them involved? Everyone in Freetown has the option to be a tree steward. And the tree stewarding is important because we want to be growing, not just planting. So with our tree stewards, we did a massive campaign. We identified the key areas we wanted to plant trees, and we went door to door, house to house, engaging residents and offering them the opportunity to be a tree steward, to not just plant, but to care for the tree. And so our monitoring of that process brought in the next set of city residents, our community-based organizations. We have 12 of them, 11 or 12 of them signed up, and it's their job to do that knocking on the doors, to sign up the tree stewards. We have them registered on a tree tracker app. And that tree tracker app enables us to have a photo of where the tree is being planted in that compound, in that yard, in that school, etc. What trees existed before, and then the tree monitors, the community-based organizations, visit every month to track the progress of that tree. And all of this data is captured by the app and fed into a database. So this means that the city is involved, and it was so exciting when we did our first tree giveaway, because of course, as a tree steward, we're not asking you to buy the seedlings, we're giving you the opportunity to take them as part of a tree giveaway. The first tree giveaway we had, I was really surprised to see the range of residents that turned up, from young kids to older grandmothers to people living in informal settlements who one might think, but they don't even have enough space for their own lives. But there was, and there continues to be, a deep interest as we make the connection between flood mitigation, soil erosion, the dangers that people's lives are experiencing, and the role that they can play individually to mitigate against that. And we're also building on an old tradition. So I learned, I think I probably knew this, but I had forgotten. I was reminded recently that in our tradition, and I'm a Creole, and I think other tribes in our country also have this tradition, that when you were born, your mother's, the umbilical cord, when it was cut, that it was a tradition to plant to bury the umbilical cord and plant a tree in that spot. And someone said to me the other day that she had just been to see where her tree was planted. So bringing back, tying all of this narrative into these old traditions is also useful. So we have in Freetown, the Tree Town, an ambitious but doable, scientifically led and driven process of planting 1 million trees in our city, not as the city government or the city council, but in collaboration and in partnership with the residents of our city and with other stakeholders like the Ministry of Agriculture that played a role in determining the species, the Environment Protection Agency, the protected authorities agents. So really making sure, and of course the private sector have come on board with wanting to be a part of what's going on and taking on specific parks and open spaces within the city where they can put their funding. To fund all of this has cost a lot of money, as you can imagine. And we're really grateful that the World Bank has come in with a big chunk of that money, working with our Ministry of Finance. But also we kicked off with a fundraiser in January. We've had private sector, we've had individuals, we've had people go on fundraising drives. It's really brought us together as a city. And I think it's going to hold us together because it's not just planting, as we've said, it's growing. Freetown used to be a green city. We want to make it that again. Freetown, the Tree Town, is a very simple and what we hope will be an effective way of bringing big conversations around climate change, action that can be taken, the need for the carbon sink to be grown worldwide, globally, offsets, these very important technical conversations. Freetown, the Tree Town, brings it into everybody's homes and makes it possible for a Freetonian to say, I want to be part of it. It becomes doable because they can go to a tree giveaway, pick up a tree, be registered as a tree steward, and we can green our city again. Thank you.